In part 3 of Reality and Consciousness, we are going to look at atoms and light. We will discover how atoms are made from electromagnetic oscillations and why they come into existence. In part 2 we discovered how quantum three-dimensional space is an integral part of a quantum reflexive process. We have also seen that to make fields from quanta, all we have to do is add together countless numbers of these quanta. So this diagram illustrates the idea of adding together quantum reflexive processes. Of course, this is a ridiculously small number, but you get the idea. When we add together countless numbers of these quanta, we produce the whole of three-dimensional space. In this diagram, we can see that everything is chaotic. There is no structure in this space. So we are looking at an immensely magnified, tiny part of a flat, uniform, universal field. From earlier, we are familiar with the idea of illustrating fields as disks. So here is our master reflexive process space field. We can see that it is very uninteresting. So, if we want to build an interesting universe, we need to get from this to this, from a uniform field to a variable field. So using the word thing in its all-encompassing sense, what sort of things would we like a variable master field to contain and explain? If we are going to build everything into this field, the choice of what we might look at in a short time is very arbitrary. So, we will just take some very diverse phenomena and see if we can explain their existence. We have space, light as an example of the electromagnetic spectrum, atoms, and so materials, solids, liquids and gases, structure and form, life and consciousness, why we make tools, the nature of cyborgs, what our minds are and how we make up our mind, the nature of families, societies, corporations and countries, where our emotions come from, how we can be a balanced or unbalanced mind, the phenomena of groupthink, the existence of spirits and spirit communication, cosmic consciousness, absolute sentient power, spirituality and religions. This is quite an eclectic mix. If we find we have a consistent explanation for all of these phenomena, then we will have travelled a long way towards understanding the nature of the universe and how we fit into it. At present, we are concentrating on space, light and atoms. We have already seen how the quantum reflexive process makes space. But how does it make atoms? The best picture we have of an atom shows just a cloud of electricity, a cloud of electric quanta. Perhaps Eugene Halliday can help us out again. He says, a closed-in zone is a place of finite actuality, or an actual being, an existential entity, a reference centre for consciousness, an object on which the will may act. And when we draw a circle, we observe that its line rotates and circumscribes a zone in space. we say that it simultaneously includes and excludes. It includes or closes in a finite zone called a place. It excludes or closes out an infinity of space beyond, a fact we shall find most important when we come to the problem of identification. So he advises us to draw a circle that includes and excludes. It's time to use our quantum boundaries. We can arrange the quantum boundaries of many quantum reflexive processes to form a circular spherical boundary. As this happens, all the participating interfunctional properties take on the same form. We have now carried out Eugene Halliday's guidance. We have drawn a circle that simultaneously includes and excludes. The included area is the atom, and the excluded area is the infinity of space beyond. The inside of the atom consists of numerous concentric quantum shells. In this diagram we are looking at just a few, and we are only looking at some of the electric quanta in the inner shells. But we need to ask the question, why would the electric quanta, the quantum reflexive processes, arrange themselves in this way? This question can be paraphrased as, why is there something rather than nothing? The physical reason is simply that the electric charges within the atom push out further against random surrounding charges. So the inner charges, the atom's charges, make more space for themselves. By working together in this arrangement, all the reflexive quantum processes within the atom grow in extent. They get bigger. But why do charges arrange themselves in this way? Why do atoms exist? Why, we can ask again, is there something rather than nothing? The answer is that atoms built from quantum reflexive processes with interfunctional quantum sentience are themselves sentient. They are aware that by working together that they grow. They do not want to shrink out of existence. Atoms exist because they and the reflexive quantum processes from which they are built have an inherent existential property. Atoms built from quantum reflexive processes are much more than atoms built from particles. They are sentient. Before investigating what we can build with sentient atoms, it will be interesting to look at the relationship between atoms and light. We saw earlier that every oscillating electric quantum comes with its own circulating magnetic field, and in this diagram we have again added in the circulations in the outer shell of an atom. These small circulatory patterns work together to make large circulatory patterns. This phenomenon in chemistry is called delocalization. So in the outer shell, delocalization sets up a clockwise and an anti-clockwise magnetic rotation. Of course, all the inner shells have their own rotations. So this is what the magnetic circulations look like for a few shells. They are associated with electric charge oscillations, so our atom consists of confined electromagnetic oscillations. We can illustrate the electromagnetic nature of the atom schematically using the red, green and blue pixels of a television screen. The red and green of the magnetic circulations add together to make yellow. And if we add in the blue electric oscillations, we get a field of white light. This diagram illustrates that atoms are made of confined light, confined electromagnetic oscillations. We can say that atoms are made of bounded, circulating light. So how does our atom made of light look to an outside observer? Well, because the light from which it is made is confined within its boundary, an unilluminated atom is black. This is because no light escapes from it. It is an atom-sized black hole. We are, however, able to see atoms by illuminating them, that is, by shining a light on them and looking at the reflected light, the re-emitted light. So the outside observer sees a cloud of electric charge that we illustrated earlier. We can now pick up on why we chose to make our quantum reflexive process from negative electric charges. By doing so, we tie in with the convention atoms by volume consist almost entirely of negative electric charge described as quantum electrons. We will return to quantum electrons in the final part of this series. Atoms are very small representatives of matter, and here we are suggesting that matter is made of trapped light. We can ask if there is any large-scale evidence for this, and the evidence is quite literally in front of our eyes. We know that if we exclude light from a room, then everything in that room made of atoms becomes black, because there is no reflected light for us to see. So what about the sun? How can that be black? Here we have a picture of a sunspot. It is black. One of the great mysteries of modern science is why sunspots are black. Sunspots are seen beneath the bright outer convective zone of the sun. So according to the nuclear fusion model of the sun, the inside of the sun should be hotter than the outside. So sunspots should be blazingly blue-white, which they are not. However, if we extend our model of the atom being made of trapped light to the sun being made of trapped light, then the conundrum can be solved. Just like the atom, the sun is black, and we see it because some of the light and the other electromagnetic oscillations escape from its surface. But we are getting sidetracked. More about scientific mysteries in part 12. What more can we say about atoms and light? We can conclude that because atoms are made of reflexive processes, which are also electromagnetic oscillations, and we too are made of atoms, then we are also made of electromagnetic oscillations. We can simply say that we are made of light. Is this news? Possibly not. It seems light has been recognized as being important for a long time. Genesis chapter 1 verse 3 says, "And God said, Let there be light, and there was light." In this video we have seen that by adding together many quantum reflexive processes we can build atoms. In the next video we will see how sentient atoms can build not just the structures that we see around us, but life and consciousness as well. We need to talk about holons, and we will do this in part 4.